everyone! This video tells you about what happens when we tell people what they should do. So the question for our class is, if we want people to be more sustainable in their behavior, can we just tell them to do that? As always, please take a moment to get yourself settled and ready to learn. You will need a way to write down some thoughts, so decide now how you will do that. Pause if you need some time to get rid of distractions or clear your mind and prepare your environment. First, I'd like for you to imagine your reaction to the following scenario. Consider how you would feel and what thoughts you would have, and then write them down before proceeding. I'm using a scenario that may or may not match up to your reality, but one I believe college students should be able to consider fairly easily. Imagine that you live in an apartment with a roommate. One day, you're in your apartment living room working on some homework. Get a good image. Your roommate arrives from the grocery store and heads to the kitchen to put away the purchases. After a few minutes, your roommate comes into where you are working and says, "From now on, you need to rinse and put all of your dishes in the dishwasher right away after you use them." Write down your immediate reaction, your thoughts, your feelings, and how you might respond. Pause now to do so. Okay, if you are like most people, one of your reactions, even if you thought it might change or mellow over time, was, "Hey, you can't just tell me what to do. Who do you think you are?" This is so common that psychology researchers have given this effect a name: psychological reactance. It's the negative feeling that can arise if you feel someone's trying to restrict your choices and freedom. We often act upon this feeling by doing something to assert our freedom, which sometimes means we do the exact opposite of what we were told to do. Reactance is especially strong in toddlers, think of them always saying no to everything, and in teenagers who are trying to assert their freedom and independence, growing away from their parents' control. I will give you a couple of examples so that you can get more clarity on this principle. So the first is a personal one from high school for me. I was dating a boy whose family my parents did not respect. Unbeknownst to me, his father was a known dealer of marijuana in our small Kentucky town. My parents put a lot of pressure on me to stop seeing him, but I didn't really know why. It just felt to me like they were trying to control me, which I did not believe was justified. In retrospect, I now see that I continued to date him for a couple of years longer than I probably would have, just because my parents didn't want me to. I felt reactance, and I acted to assert my feeling that I was an independent and autonomous decision maker in my own life by continuing to date him. I hope you can see from the outside that true autonomy would have meant that my parents' pressure did not affect me one way or the other. But until we achieve a mature, full sense of self, reactance and assertions of freedom are one way we cope with the confusion on the path to true autonomy. Here is an example from Harry Potter.
Did you see his face? Maybe if the fat lad would give him this a squeeze, he'd remember to fall on his fat ass. Give it here, Malfoy. No. I think I'll leave somewhere for Longbottom to find. How about the roof?
So clearly, Malfoy did not want Harry Potter to tell him what he could do. Both my example and the film demonstrate that we tend to feel and act on psychological reactance when we don't believe that the people who are telling us to do something are justified, or when we in some way need to feel that person is not in control of us. Pause now and try to remember some time in your own life when you experienced reactance and what you did and the circumstances. After this lesson, please share the experience on our class discussion board. Bonus points if you can provide me with a link to another good illustration from a film. Okay, so how does this apply to sustainability? What do you observe around you in terms of messages trying to get people to be more sustainable? How about this one? Stop Think, recycle. It's a bit bossy, right? Do you think it would be effective now that you know what you know about psychological reactance? I actually have a friend who watched the film An Inconvenient Truth, created by Al Gore, which discussed the problems of global warming and ended with a list of a few things you could do as an everyday citizen to help, such as change light bulbs to compact fluorescent bulbs. Now, in case you didn't know, Al Gore was Vice President of the United States under President Bill Clinton, a Democrat. My friend is a pretty staunch Republican. How do you think he felt when a Democrat was telling people what they should do to address climate change? If you said he wouldn't do it and would do the opposite, you'd be right. I remember having a conversation with him back in 2007 in which he told me that he completely refused to do anything or believe anything that Al Gore told him. So, what does this say about the messages we give people to try to persuade them to be more sustainable? Well, as I continue to do in this class, I'd like to bring us around to some science. Is there any research on how to deal with reactance? This study combined a phenomenon we already discussed, the foot in the door effect, with a way to reduce dissonance. Additionally, this was a field experiment. If you need to, pause and review the foot in the door effect and the characteristics of a field experiment. Okay, so the researchers wanted to see what would be the most effective way to get people to agree to sort their household wastes for a month, which would be considered a large request. It would take time, people would have to learn how, and it could be unpleasant. So everyone was asked to do that, but there were 4 groups, each given a different request. And the 4 groups were created by a combination of 2 variables. One variable was whether the people were first asked, before they were asked to sort their wastes, if they would complete a brief survey. Think about how this is a foot-in-the-door technique. The other variable was whether the people heard the statement, "Of course you are free to accept or to refuse," or not. Think about how this would be a method to reduce psychological reactance. So you can see from this, 4 groups were used. First, when people were not asked to do the survey and no mention was made of whether they were free to choose. Second, people who were asked to do the survey first, but did not hear the statement about being free to choose. People who were told they were free to choose, but not asked to do the survey first. And finally, people who were asked both to do the survey first and told they were free to accept or to refuse. So think about what you would expect in terms of the percentage of people who agreed to selectively sort their household wastes. I'll start with the percentage down here. So 40% of the people who were not asked to do a survey first, nor were told that they are free to accept or refuse, 40% agreed to sort their wastes. So what happened in the other conditions with just small variations to the wording? Please pause now and make predictions for the percentages of people in each of the 3 remaining conditions. Did you figure out that 40% would be the lowest? It turned out that the 2 techniques alone were both higher than no technique at all. Around 60% each. The best option, though, was to combine the techniques, using the foot in the door and giving them a reason to have lower reactance, yielded 78% compliance. So for your next steps, we've covered the what and the so what components of this issue. You now know what psychological reactance is and its effects. The next question is, what next? How can you put this learning into effect? Consider, how could you use your new understanding of psychological reactance and the findings of the experiment in your application project? Write down your thoughts now, and later you will have a chance to share them with your group members.